The princess was trouble, but Dick had no way to know that. He didn't even know she was a real princess. All Dick knew was she was the prettiest girl he'd ever seen.
Looks like Deadpool didn't make the cut.
April shook her head in mock sadness.
Never meet your heroes, I guess.
Dick watched the princess shoo the man away. He was trying to protest, but the princess drowned him out.
Pretender! Liar! You are no true hero! Be gone from my sight!
Dick shrugged. Deadpool's more of an anti-hero anyway. He'd been watching the princess for over an hour now. She'd call out, praying for a hero, but anyone who approached would be subjected to an interview process. So far, all had failed. Still, it's nice to have some entertainment while we're waiting in line. This was Dick's first Comicon. He'd scrimped and saved for months to be able to go, more for April's sake than his own. He liked comics well enough, but he was mostly a video game nerd. Still, he thought it'd be fun, and he never could say no when April batted her lashes at him. If he'd known just how much time he'd spend standing in line, he might have put up more of a fight, or at least held out for a better bribe than a t-shirt. Then again, maybe not. Dick sighed. A glance to the left brought his best friend back into view. April was dressed as a female version of Spider-Man. No, not Spider-Man, he reminded himself. Spider-Gwen. April would be mad if he mixed it up again. The outfit hid her face and most of her skin, but somehow he still found it hard not to stare. April noticed the sigh, somehow conveying a concerned look, despite her fabric-covered face. Dick knew better than to try to play cool and brush it off, but he didn't want to admit it was her he'd been thinking about. To April, a platonic friendship was the most natural thing in the world. Dick couldn't imagine spending 2 minutes near a girl, any girl, without thinking things that were definitely not platonic. Not that he was dumb enough to tell her that. Luckily, a very pretty distraction was still yelling at passers-by. She sure is pretty, Dick sighed again. His friend followed his gaze and gave him a knowing look.
Yeah, she is,
April agreed. Dick couldn't see it, but he knew her lips quirked. Too bad she's crazy. The pretty ones always are. April punched him in the shoulder. Long practice prevented him from making any unmanly, pained noises, but he shot her a look. What was that for?
The pretty ones are crazy, huh?
She put a hand on her hip.
What does that make me?
Dick gave her a grin. Crazier than most. April punched him again.
Jerk.
Then she adjusted her costume's hood, thinking,
on second thought, I'll take that as a compliment.
Kinda proving my point here. That earned him another punch. Stop that. Now his arm was all tingly. Why did she hit him in the same place every time? And why was that place a pressure point?
Sorry.
April sounded like she meant it. That was one of the things he liked about her. She folded her arms. You're still a jerk, though. Yeah, said Dick. I can be kind of a dick sometimes. April rolled her eyes. Dick briefly wished she'd forgone the mask and left her face exposed, like some of the other Spider-Gwen cosplayers he'd seen. She was super cute when she rolled her eyes.
Please, does anyone know of a hero?
The princess called out again. Dick didn't know if she was supposed to be an alien princess or an elven one, but he was sure she was a masterclass in cosplay. A shimmering blue dress clung to her, emphasizing a fit waist and perfect legs. The dress was cut low, revealing a vast expanse of pale cleavage. Dick realized he was staring again, and with an effort of will made himself take in the rest of her costume. She had elf ears that looked real, and some kind of contact that made her blue eyes glow with a pale light. Wavy chestnut hair cascaded down her back, spilling over her shoulders. A silver tiara crowned it, set with a stone in the middle that gave off a golden glow. A silver pendant rested below her neck, some kind of twisty design with a green stone in the middle. The green stone glowed as well. Even without the costume, Dick suspected she'd be one of the most beautiful women he'd ever seen, with wide eyes and full lips, and a voice that could steal his breath away. With a start, Dick realized he was staring again. He tore his eyes away and said to April, I think I figured it out.
Figured out what? She asked.
I figured out what she's doing. Dick glanced at the princess again. A couple guys dressed as Superman were trying to talk to her. The interview thing. You figured out why she's giving interviews? Dick had always found it hard to believe that Spider-Man could show so many expressions with his mask on in the comics. April's dubious look was making him a believer. I figured out how she's giving interviews, Dick corrected. Tell her anything that seems made up that you haven't done in real life, and you fail. Okay. April still looked dubious. So? So I have to tell her my real accomplishments, Dick explained. April snorted. What accomplishments? You just play video games all day. Exactly, said Dick. I've wielded the Triforce, saved kingdoms and worlds. He put his hands on his hips and puffed his chest out, leaning into the melodrama. I have slain gods and monsters. You have eaten Cheerios in your mum's basement. April smirked at him. Wait, her head tilted. Are you actually going to talk to her? I can talk to girls, said Dick, offended. Since when? I talk to you all the time. We've been friends since we were 8, April reminded him. You were sort of grandfathered in. Whatever. Dick fixed his gaze on the princess. It's a good plan, and she's a fellow nerd. This can work. Or she's just crazy, April suggested. She peered at the princess. She looks like she's taking this really seriously. Dick shrugged. She's probably a theatre chick. They're like that sometimes. He took a breath, gathering himself. I'm going to go talk to her. Wish me luck. POV. Iluna. Iluna was getting desperate. She'd been given 48 hours to complete her task, and that time was almost spent. This world was strange. The city she was in had no walls, no fortifications. She'd seen no horses, and the people travelled in metal wagons that moved themselves. There were no kings, and commoners casually wielded magics that would make an archmage green with envy. Finding this place had taken most of her time. She'd asked all over the city where heroes could be found, and one of the commoners had directed her here. Unfortunately, the world shift ritual destroyed anything not specifically enchanted to withstand it, so she'd been unable to bring anything but her clothes and a few magic items. She had no money to purchase entrance, and she'd been forced to use subterfuge and some of her dwindling supply of magic to get in. Iluna had considered trying to steal food as well. She had found fountains to slake her thirst, but she hadn't eaten in quite some time. In the end, she decided against it. Such conduct was unbecoming of royalty. More to the point, she didn't dare risk being imprisoned or expelled from this place. Her people were dying. She couldn't fail them no matter how hungry she might be. At first glance, the Comicon was teeming with heroes, but Iluna quickly learned they were just pretenders. Their weapons and armor were fake, and so far none had told her the truth, even going so far as to lie about their names. Iluna sent a silent prayer of thanks that she'd been able to bring the Diadem of Wisdom to this world. Without it, she could easily have brought back a false hero by mistake. She touched the amulet of the Paragon, checking to see how much time remained. Fear of failure shot up her legs as she found the answer. Just under an hour. If she could not find a champion in just under an hour, she would have to return without one. If she waited any longer, she would not be able to return at all. Oh, please, she begged the people around her. Please, anyone? Does anyone know where I can find a hero? A man stepped out of the line he was in. A boy, really. He was not outfitted in the fancy clothes of the pretenders she'd met, clad instead in the outfit of a commoner. Blue pants of some sturdy-seeming material. A black shirt. This one had a picture of a green artifact on the front. A lantern, perhaps. The boy was an inch or so taller than Iluna, but skinny. Brown eyes beneath a mop of black hair. No calluses on his hands, and a soft face. No hero, this one. Still, maybe the boy could at least tell her where to look. Iluna would take whatever help she could get. The woman he'd been standing with turned to watch as he approached. She was dressed as one of the spider people. Iluna had taken the spider people for assassins at first, but one of them had assured her that spider people don't kill. Thieves, perhaps? Iluna supposed it didn't matter. It was unlikely any group named after spiders would be heroic. My lady, the boy addressed her, you seem to be in some distress. Might I offer assistance? The boy was polite, at least. Not everyone had been. Iluna dearly wished she had brought a weapon, but there had barely been time to enchant her dress, and any blade powerful enough to survive the journey on its own was too precious to risk on her desperate gamble.
"Perchance," she replied, judiciously. "I am Princess Eluna Stesia, of the Kingdom of Lewin, and I seek a hero."
"Nice to meet you, Your Highness." The boy sketched a bow. Not a very good one, but Eluna appreciated the gesture. "I'm Richard Tracer, but my friends call me Dick. Tell me more of this hero you seek."
"He must be strong and swift," Eluna told him. "A champion without equal."
As she had done so many times before, she laid down her first test.
"Above all else, he must have a heart that knows no fear."
The boy frowned. Well, that's stupid. He must have seen her expression because he quickly corrected himself. Forgive my saying so, Your Highness, but a man without fear? That's misguided at best." Eluna perked up at this, but tried not to show it. She frowned at the boy.
"What do you mean?"
"A man without fear is a man without hope," said the boy. "Without caution or courage. And what happens to this fearless champion when he meets something that does make him afraid? He'll be helpless against it." He shook his head. "No, you don't need a man without fear. You need a man," he gave her a sly grin, "that can overcome great fear." He shrugged. "Or a woman that can. I'm not sexist." Eluna's eyes widened. The boy had just recited the third tenet of the Paragon. Not word for word by any means, but in essence. Maybe this one knew what it means to be a hero.
"Do you know of such a person?"
Eluna barely dared to breathe as she waited for the answer. "I might," said the boy. "What else are you looking for?"
"Well..."
Eluna regathered her scattered wits. The rush of hope had scrambled her a bit.
"He must be powerful in battle. Someone who could slay an ogre single-handed, or maybe even a dragon."
A dragon might be too much to ask, she knew. Defeating such a powerful foe was the works of armies, not a single man. "Oh," said the boy, "I've killed a dragon." Eluna frowned at the boy. Another pretender? The diadem of wisdom was silent. It had not detected a lie.
"You have?"
"Several, in fact," the boy stated. "Alduin himself has fallen to my blade." He frowned. "Well, my arrows, technically. I always use arrows for that one."
"You're a dragon slayer?"
This skinny boy. It couldn't be. "I am," he said with certainty, "among other things."
"Oh?"
The diadem was still not reacting. Could he be circumventing his magic somehow?
"And will you tell me some of your deeds?"
"As you wish." The boy bowed again, but the grin on his face made it seem disrespectful. "Let's see. I've saved Earthrealm by defeating Shao Kahn in mortal combat. I destroyed the Enclave and retrieved the Gek. I killed the God of War. And I have closed the gates of oblivion." The diadem did not react. The princess stared.
You've slain a god?"
"Oh, I've killed a bunch of them," the boy nodded. "Ares, Zeus, most of the Olympians, really." He scratched his head, thinking. "And some of the Norse. Oh, and Diablo." Dick grinned. "I don't know if he counts, but you don't know what work is until you've had to kill Diablo 3 times in one day." Could the diadem be broken? Eluna wouldn't know unless she caught the boy in a lie. She shook herself and asked, "With such strength of arm, there's hardly a need for anyone else, is there?" "Of course there is," the boy scoffed. "There's more to being a hero than just punching people." The second tenet. Was he reading her mind somehow? "I've led armies. I built civilizations from the ground up and protected them. I engineered a peace between the Quarians and the Geth. And I convinced the Forsaken not to use the Deep Gate, saving the exiled kingdoms from the horrors without the need for bloodshed. I know that words and a quick wit can do things you'd never accomplish with strength alone." The diadem was still not reacting. Could this scrawny boy really have done all the things he claimed? It sounded ridiculous. Eluna took a breath. There was only one way to be sure.
"Give me your hand," she demanded.
The boy looked at her outstretched palm, then reached over and gripped it. His hand was soft. The princess pulled it to her, pressed the back of it against the amulet of the Paragon. His face flushed, but she ignored it. She asked the amulet to show her what Dick had achieved. A massive scroll of text appeared in front of her. She had never seen such a large list of accomplishments. A quick question in her mind brought her to the section on slain enemies, and her breath caught. Dick had not slain several dragons. Dick had slain several tens of thousands of dragons. And more. Hundreds of archmages, thousands of necromancers, over 1 million bandits, and a vast list of creatures she'd never heard of. Goombas and necromorphs, xenon and virages, and so many others. Dick had killed 338 gods. It couldn't be true. It couldn't be real. Iluna moved on to skills and saw a vast collection of magics and martial arts. She skinned it for a few seconds, then moved on to titles he had won. Once again, the scroll stretched farther than she could read in one sitting, but 2 titles jumped out at her: Godslayer and God of War. Iluna! Dick's hand came off the amulet, and the scroll disappeared. His other hand was gripping her shoulder. He must have been speaking to her for some time. He leaned closer, looking into her eyes. Are you all right? Iluna tried to bring herself back into focus. She stared at the boy. No, not a boy. Are you a god? What? The hero's brow crinkled. Not currently. He let go of the princess and stepped back. Not currently, mused the princess, but he had been. The amulet of the paragon couldn't lie. This man had been a god. He'd been a king. He'd saved entire worlds. Iluna frowned. It was impossible. To accomplish so much, it would take years, decades. This Dick looked to be Iluna's age at most. How old are you? His face twisted with offense. I'm older than I look, he groused at her. Of course, Iluna suddenly felt the fool. A man who'd been a god could appear as he wished. Or maybe he'd started life over as a mortal. Iluna shook her head. She had so many questions, but they didn't matter right now. Only one thing mattered. It's you, she told him. You are the one. You're not the first girl to say that to me, the hero quipped. The diadem pulsed. The hero had lied. Iluna frowned, confused. Why would he lie about such a minor thing? She took in his lopsided grin. The answer struck her like a physical blow. It was because he knew. He'd sussed out that Iluna had a way of sensing lies. He'd guessed she had started to doubt his veracity. He wasn't trying to deceive her. He lied on purpose to prove himself, so she wouldn't have to express her doubts and ask. Are you okay? He asked again. Iluna's eyes watered. You're so kind. Yeah, well. Dick scratched his head. I guess you should be kind when you can. The 5th tenant. There were 10, but Iluna didn't need to hear any more. The tenets of the Paragon were not a creed. They were a way for the sages to recognize greatness. Even the most famous of heroes rarely met more than a few of the criteria. Dick had demonstrated 3 offhand. Iluna was certain he encompassed the other 7. He was more than a hero. Dick was a paragon. Dick! The Spider-Woman called. The line's moving. I think the panel's about to start. Iluna shot the woman a glare. Of all the times to interrupt. Okay, Dick called back. Be there in a sec. He turned to Iluna. Looks like I gotta go. Maybe we can pick this up after the panel. Or you can give me your number. My number? Iluna didn't have a number. What did numbers have to do with anything? Right, said Dick. He looked disappointed for some reason. Okay. He sketched another bow. It was nice meeting you, Your Highness. Panic seized Iluna as the hero walked away. Wait! Her voice was shrill. Dick turned, a question in his eyes. The princess had been prepared to offer a substantial reward for his help. Riches, titles, maybe even the kingdom itself, so long as he saved her people. Dick wouldn't care about any of those things. He'd been a god, and he was already the king of several countries. He had more wealth and power than Iluna could ever hope to offer. There was only one thing she could think of that might interest him. I'll give you my body. The princess offered her virtue without a second thought. It was a small price to pay. Without Dick, everyone she ever loved would die. She would do anything to stop that from happening. That's not... Dick blinked several times. What? People were staring at them. Several of them were pointing phones in their direction, including Dick's spider friend. Iluna had learned that these phones had a special magic that could make a moving painting of whatever they pointed at. Her eyes widened as she realized her mistake. Dick was dressed as a commoner. He'd been trying to avoid attention. Her outburst had revealed him, and now everyone wanted a painting of the famous hero. Iluna had ruined everything.
Dick was going to leave. Tears fell. She was so tired. She was tired and hungry, and she'd failed. Everyone was going to die. The princess held her head in her hands as she wept. Sobs racked her shoulders. Eluna? A hand on her shoulder. Eluna, what's wrong? She reached out and clung to him, clutching at his arms. Please, Dick, she wailed. You have to help me. What's wrong? The hero asked again. Are you in trouble? He glanced all around. Is someone after you? Please, the princess begged. You have to help. I will, promised the paragon. I'll help you. Just tell me what you need. Eluna cried harder. She should have known. She should have known she didn't have to offer her body. Dick was a paragon. Her tears were enough. He was so focused on her distress that he didn't notice as she slipped the aegis of the paragon over his wrist. She felt bad about it, but what could she do? There was too much at stake. She couldn't let him get away. Promise me, she asked again. Swear to me that you will help. I swear. He gave his word. I promise I'll help. Tell me what's wrong. The aegis of the paragon activated with a flash of red light. He was hers now, bound. He glanced down at the bracelet, confused. Eluna didn't dare give him time to sort out what had happened. She threw herself around him, clenching her arms and activating the amulet of the paragon. Green flames exploded into a circle around them. Dick jumped, but the princess tightened her grip, holding him in place. Dick! Eluna looked up to see the Spider-Woman racing towards them. She would not make it in time. Dick was bound, and in another few seconds he would follow the princess back to her world. There he would fight horrors beyond the imaginations of men. He would save the kingdom of Leywin, or he would die in the attempt. I'm sorry, the princess whispered. April! Dick shouted at the woman. The flames died out, revealing a circle of green light. The hero looked down as the wall shift ritual activated. The circle became a hole, leading down into a vortex of green light. Oh, shit! The princess and the hero fell through the hole, on their way to another world.